welcome to
Let's Talk About AppSecOps.
My name is Mark Lambert, Chief Product Officer here at ArmorCode, and I'm joined by my good friend and ArmorCode wearing baseball hat, Luis Goodman. How you doing, Luis?
I'm doing amazing. How's it going?
Awesome. All right. Well, let's do this. Let's talk about the thing that everybody's talking about. Let's talk about ChatGPT. Let's talk about. Okay. You know what? We're going to break this into two episodes. We're going to do one about ChatGPT. We're going to talk about potential use cases. The potential overhype that might be out there. And then we'll actually talk about different types of AI in a second podcast. So we're going to break this out into two pieces. So why don't you go ahead and kick us off, Luis? I know you've been playing with ChatGPT for a while, and then Blackbird, I guess, is the
Darkbird.
Darkbird. Sorry, yeah. Darkbird. Yeah,
Darkbird.
Go ahead.
I've been playing with version 3 and version 4.5. I've got it on my watch. I've got it on my laptop. I have not paid for it yet, but I'm thinking, well, the one on the watch I did pay for. But using it for correcting your emails and becoming more precise in what you're trying to say, communication, it's huge. It's a game changer. All right. I only had 140 characters that I had to put something in, and I put it in the ChatGPT and it said, "Here, let me make that better for you." Boom. I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. 10 seconds. That's all it took. So does it work? Yeah. Oh yeah, it totally works. Can you tell? It just depends on, if you're just plagiarizing the whole, Moby Dick, of course you can tell. But if you're taking parts and pieces out of a book that just talks about a big fish, you could be talking about all kinds of stuff. So I like it.
So how can we use it for in cybersecurity? What's your thinking?
So one of the big things that I've noticed is being able to bring down, prioritize a lot of the manual work that's happening. And so, for example, when we talk about vulnerability management, if you're just using spreadsheets, we could potentially bring that in and start narrowing down and prioritizing what we're doing. Like, let's look for this particular line of code. And you have 900 entries, and it would reduce it for you, and it would say, those are the 7 that you need to go focus on. So it's still a manual process right now, but eventually I think we could even be using, part of the back-end engine.
Yeah. So I've been fortunate enough to have lived through the last hype cycle for AI. And in previous lives, worked with real AI as well as kind of like AI-ish. And I think that's a conversation I definitely want to get into in the second part of this podcast, is like, how can we use other types of AI or even just trained algorithms? Now, when we're looking specifically at ChatGPT, there are some use cases that look very powerful, right, on the surface. Hey, it does all of this stuff for us, but we do have to take into account that it is a machine generating this data or this content. So what's it going to be good at doing? It's going to be good at writing stuff. I like your example of an email, right? Or condensing something so that I can fit into a bracket. So if you were to ask GCP, explain to me cross-site scripting, then it's actually pretty good. It'll kind of like take the data from the web. It's like a more sophisticated Google. It's going to give me something that's contextual. And you can even say, as a non-technical person, or using a football analogy or whatever, and you can use that to put that technical information into the context of the person that's working on it. You can then go a step further and say, here, propose me or write me some code that would show an example of a remediation action. So again, a little bit better than just doing a Stack Overflow search. But again, we have to remember that it is just a machine that's generating it. So one of the things that I've seen is a little bit of an overhype, as always happens. Hey, we're going to use ChatGPT to just rewrite all of our code for us, and we know that is not a good path. But it's a great assistive technology. Get me moving forward. Explain it to me. Close the content gap.
Yep.
That's and some of the things I've been playing with have been around taking contextual information that I get from application security, vulnerability management, and saying, okay, like, explain this to me, like, so that I understand how to, and the content it generates is pretty good, you know, and then propose remediation paths. Again, the content it gives me is pretty good. There is a big security concern though, which is the data that you are sharing with ChatGPT and what others can do with that, because there have been demonstrated exploits of being able to, in essence, find out what other people are searching. So I think there's certainly a framework that we need to put around this to make sure that any use of something like ChatGPT, even on the back end in a system that you're using today, you need to make sure that you know what data is going through that communication channel.
It's huge. I mean, this is a conversation that I had with my son. I said, back in the 80s, there was these automatic teller machines, right, that would give us money, right? And that didn't make bank tellers go out of business. But what it did do was, instead of having a line of 17 bank tellers at big banks, it brought it down to 5. And then what it did was it started understanding how it was that they were moving, the cadence that they were keeping, and then they could now predict, well, I only need $5,000 in each ATM to be able to suffice for everybody that comes in. I don't need to talk to anybody. Everything that needs to be done is via a prompt. That's exactly what ChatGPT is doing. It's asking for a prompt. And then once you get there, you know, you have the capabilities of getting your outcome. What's your outcome? Is pulling your money out of the bank. That's the same thing that Walmart and Target and McDonald's are all doing with their automated kiosk. Is we've trained them so well with people to people interaction that now the automated can be put into play as well. And if you go look at any large super Walmart, there's like, I think, a reduction of about 30% of their workforce is now an automated kiosk.
Yeah. So this is a good point to break and switch into the second half, right? So, you know, generative AI, ChatGPT models helping with content generation, I think, is spot on. But let's pause and then come back in the next episode and talk about how we can further leverage AI to improve efficiencies and workflow improvements, you know, like automation. All right. Thanks very much for joining. Stay tuned for the next one. It's going to come soon. Also, you know, click link, subscribe. Check out in the show notes, we're adding a link for the AppSecOps conference that's coming up in June. Totally virtual conference, free for everyone. Also, you'll be able to see recordings from last year's conference there. It's hosted by the Purple Belt community, a community that ArmorCode is a proud sponsor of. There's got a lot of great content that's coming out there at the end of June. So go ahead and check the show notes for that as well. But at this point, I think we're a wrap. We're about 7 minutes, so a little over normal. Thanks very much, Luis.
See you next time.
Thanks, everyone.